easy go.
First the debt, then the occupation. China's 375 lakh crore rupees on the world borrowing of World Bank and IMF did not give as much loan to China to 150 countries. According to the Harvard Business Review, China lent $1.5 trillion to 150 countries, while the World Bank and IMF lent $200 billion. China lent a dozen countries more than 20% of their GDP. Djibouti is the only country on which China accounts for 77% of total debt. According to a UN report, China invested $139 billion in 2018, a 4% increase over 2017. Mahinda Rajapaksa was president of Sri Lanka from 2005 to 2015 and is now Prime Minister. Rajapaksa is credited with ending the 3 decades of civil war in the country, but during Rajapaksa's time, Sri Lanka became heavily burdened with debt. Sri Lanka's distance from India and proximity to China increased during Rajapaksa's tenure. Sri Lanka took less advantage and China took more advantage of these proximity. Work on the Hambantota port project in Sri Lanka began as soon as Rajapaksa was president. The Sri Lankan government took a loan of $1.26 billion from China between 2007 and 2014 for this project. This loan was taken not in one go but in 5 times. Hambantota ports were already forming China-Sri Lanka together. It has been built by China's largest government company, Harbour Engineering, whereas 85% of the money was invested by Exim Bank of China. The result of constant borrowing was that foreign debt increased on Sri Lanka. It is believed that Sri Lanka had to lease Hambantota Port of China to Merchant Port Holdings Limited Company for 99 years in December 2017 due to mounting debt. Along with the port, Sri Lanka also had to hand over 15,000 acres of land to him. This land is only 150 kilometers from India. This whole sentence is presented as an example of how China lends infrastructure to the first small country in the name of infrastructure, makes him his debtor, and then later takes possession of his property. This picture is of the port of Hambantota. When Sri Lanka and China started work on this project together, there was a protest in Sri Lanka. At that time, experts had also described this project as the worst. Nepal is the reason for referring to this whole incident, because a few days ago, Nepal released a new map in which it named Limpuyadura, Kalapani and Ipulak as its part. However, all three are part of India. Experts believe that China is behind all this too, because China is helping Nepal financially. This is called debt trap diplomacy. In the name of infrastructure development, lending first and then capturing that country in a way, it is called debt trap diplomacy. This word is used for China only. China argues that this will strengthen the infrastructure in a small and developing country, whereas his opponents believe that China is occupying small countries by doing this. A report by the US website Harvard Business Review states that China has been lending to smaller countries since the beginning. In the 1950s and 1960s, China gave loans to many small countries. These were countries where there were communist governments. Germany's Kiel University released a report on world economy in June 2019. Accordingly, between 2000 and 2018, China's borrowing on countries increased from $500 billion to $5 trillion. According to Today, $5 trillion is 375 lakh crores. Apart from all this, the report of Harvard Business Review says that the Chinese government and its companies have given loans of more than 150 countries for $1.5 trillion, or 112,50,000 crore rupees. At present, China is the largest lender in the world. Even the IMF and World Bank did not give this much loan. Both have given a loan of $200 billion, 15 lakh rupees crore. In other words, China has given loans equal to 6% of the world's GDP to other countries. China owes more than 20% of its GDP to a dozen countries. According to a Harvard Business Review report, in 2005 China loaned more than 50 countries 1% or less of their GDP, but by the end of 2017, China started lending more than 15% of their GDP. Of these, China has lent more than 20% of its GDP to a dozen countries. countries, including Djibouti, Tonga, Maldives, Congo, Kyrgyzstan, Cambodia, Niger, Laos, Zambia and Mongolia. African countries have the most debt. African countries are China's first choice for lending. The reason for this is that most African countries are poor and small and also developing. A study in October 2018 shows that in recent years, African countries have borrowed more from China. In 2010, China had debts of $10 billion, 75,000 crores rupees according to Today, on African countries, which increased to $30 billion, 2.25 lakh crore rupees, in 2016. The African country of Djibouti is the only low-income country in the world that has the highest debt of China. Djibouti has foreign debt of over 80% of its GDP. Of this too, more than 77% of the debt on Djibouti is from China alone. However, how much is the debt? Its figures do not exist. Not only debt, China is also investing. In June last year, the UN Conference on Trade and Development was reported. According to this report, in 2018, countries around the world invested $1.3 trillion, 97.50 lakh rupees crore today. This figure was 13% lower than in 2017. Many countries of the world reduced their investment in 2018. In contrast, China's investment in other countries increased by 4%. China invested $134 billion in 2017 and $139 billion in 2018, whereas America's investment has reduced to $252 billion. China is also under debt to our neighbors. Since 2013, China has been working on the Belt and Road Initiative project. The project aims to connect Asia, Europe and Africa by road, rail and sea. The entire project is estimated to cost $1 trillion or 75 lakh rupees crore. Most of the countries that are supporting this project of China have now become debtors to China. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or CPEC is also part of this project. Both China and Pakistan are working together on this. This corridor connects Kashgar province of China to Gwadar port of Pakistan. It costs $46 billion, about 3.50 lakh crore rupees. China alone is spending around 80% of this. The result, Pakistan is gradually becoming China's debtor. According to the IMF, Pakistan has to repay China $6.7 billion by 2022. Similarly, Nepal is also supporting this project of China. In October last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Nepal on a two-day visit. This was the first time after 23 years that a Chinese president visited Nepal. During this visit, Jinping announced a grant of 56 billion Nepalese rupees, 35 billion rupees, to Nepal for infrastructure development. Bangladesh, like Pakistan, Nepal and Sri Lanka, is also part of China's Belt and Road Initiative project. As of January 2019, there was a turnover of $10 billion between China and Bangladesh. It is estimated that by 2021, the two countries will have a turnover of $18 billion. Bangladesh becoming a part of China's project is also a cause for concern, as it will pass very close to Kolkata. Is China's debt on India too? According to Finance Ministry data, as of December 2019, India has a foreign debt of 40,18,389 crores. However, which country has how much debt? Its figures could not be found.